New Testament writers use the Old Testament a lot. I mean, it's just stunning how much Old Testament there is within the New Testament. I mean, you start at the beginning of Matthew's Gospel. The very first verse is talking about David and Abraham, and it's using the phrase, the book of the genealogy, which is actually, in Greek, the book of Genesis. It's a phrase straight from the Greek version of Genesis chapter 5. It then goes through a genealogy, which reminds you very much of the genealogy in Genesis chapter 5, where one person is begetting another and so on. And it's alluding to the various women in the genealogy recording Old Testament stories. You then go through, and there are, in Matthew's Gospel, many quotations of the Old Testament. Then you also look at the shape of the story, where Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he's giving commands from a mountain, like God gave commands from a mountain. Before that, he's gone down into Egypt, or been taken down by his father Joseph, and then when the person trying to kill him has died, he comes back out. Well, that's exactly what happened with Moses. He gets baptized by John the Baptist, rather like in the Jordan, rather like the people of Israel passing through the Jordan and the Red Sea. So all of these sorts of things are happening. And it's not just there in Matthew. You look at the opening of Mark, you're in at verse 2 and verse 3, and you're already into Old Testament quotations. You look at the beginning of Luke, and it's this scene of this righteous couple who don't have a child. It reminds you of 1 Samuel, the opening of 1 Samuel, and then you get onto the poems which celebrate what God's doing in both 1 Samuel and in Luke. In John, it begins with exactly the same phrase as the opening of the Bible. So it's just filling the categories. Now, when they use the Old Testament, often they use it in surprising ways because they apply the text in ways we wouldn't expect. For instance, they see that Jesus is the fulfillment of things. And so in Matthew chapter 2, it will quote Hosea 11:1, which says, "Out of Egypt I called my son," and it will say that's about Jesus. Now, you might read Hosea and think that's surprising because "out of Egypt I called my son" seems to be about Israel coming out of Egypt. But as you read through Matthew's Gospel, you realize that it's presenting Jesus as the new Israel. That's why he has the same route coming out of Egypt and has to go through the waters of the Jordan, just like them, and so on. So in fact, you find that the attitude the New Testament writers have to the Old is that the Old is prophecy being fulfilled. Not just the bits that are called prophets making predictions, but also the whole structure of the stories are forming patterns which Jesus repeats and maybe takes to a higher level. So this is what's going on all the time. And if you find an odd quotation, the thing to do is slow down over it and really look at what's going on, because usually it's something pretty exciting.